Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to another episode of RILN Opinion Plus. This is a space for our opinions where we talk about current events and questions the Latino community is curious about. Today, we are joined by Marcela Betancur, Executive Director of the Latino Policy Institute. Welcome, Marcela. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me today.
How are you doing today?
I am well. I'm enjoying that finally the weather here in Rhode Island is starting to turn around and we're having a little bit of sun and warmth. So about time.
It's great to hear that. So, first, Marcela, thank you so much for joining us on RILN Opinion Plus. And we would like to, start off the conversation by asking, just the impact of COVID on the mission of the Latino Policy Institute and your role as executive director. And let's start the conversation there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, our organization during 2020 was very small. It was 2 people. And like most organizations, it was impacted not only, professionally of what goals are we going to address, what's going to be our main focus, but I think also, as regular people, I think we were impacted by that, not only by the health of some of our family members, but also our mental health and just kind of not knowing what's happening with our country. So, but I think in a way, COVID really helped the Latino Policy Institute pivot a bit of the work that we were doing. Again, we had to change a lot of the goals and strategies that we initially wanted to have for 2020 and beyond. But instead, we had to refocus and pivot into what was needed at the moment. So we did a lot more work with other community organizations, with government officials around information and misinformation regarding COVID, vaccines, and other issues. We wrote a report called the Latino Impact Plan, which outlined through municipalities and states, what are some of the issues that the Latino community has was facing and is facing because of COVID. And a lot of those, what we found is they're issues that actually have been existing for many years, right? Access to like not enough employment, not enough access to healthcare and things of that sort. So I think in a strange way, it also really helped focus what we needed. And that's what we've been doing ever since.
Thank you so much for that answer. So you mentioned that there were some specific changes that you had to go through being an organization. Can you explain more on what specific changes you had to go through besides it changing all of your in-person events into virtual events? Are there any more changes that you all have gone through?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think, again, just pivoting some of our goals. So interestingly enough, in December of 2019, we launched a new brand, our new logo, our new brand, a new strategic plan. And so 2020 was going to be, we were going to do, yes, events and things of that sort, but we were going to focus in different types of reports. We were going to do different kind of engagement. And we had to pivot very differently from that. And so, and then instead it was, like many others, while we're not a direct service organization, what was needed from us and what was needed from the Latino Policy Institute was, we are experts at, which is that policy and connection and bridge building with, community organizations and policymakers, including elected officials. And so I think that for the last couple of years, we've been doing that pretty well in order to bridge a lot of the gaps of lack of conversations and action between community members and elected officials. And so I think that was a really big pivot for us that, if it hadn't been for COVID, it would have probably taken much longer. But because of the situation, we had to act much faster.
Thank you so much for that. So, like speaking off of the resources and the needs of the Latinx community, can you explain more on the growth and the history of the Latinx population over the years in the state of Rhode Island in terms of how they've grown and what the type of presence and involvement they've had within Rhode Island over the years?
Absolutely, yeah. So Latinos in Rhode Island have been around for many decades. We've had, we've originally had people that from their country of origin are Dominican Republic, Colombia, Guatemala. We had a lot of, during the 60s, we had a lot of people from Dominican Republic that lived in New York, come up here. And in that same era, during the 60s, actually, is when we had a lot of people from Colombia come into to Rhode Island, because so Rhode Island was known for textiles and a lot of mills, and Colombia was an expert country in this, so they actually brought in families, and to live here and actually work in the mills. And that was in the 60s. And today we are 17% of the population in the state. But more importantly, for the first time, according to the 2020 census, every single municipality, so we have 39 cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island, and every single city and town has a Latino in it. And I think that that's a huge deal. We were actually really close to losing a congressional seat. Right now we have 2 congressional seats, even though we're a very small state. But prior to the census, which we were part of doing the census outreach, we were worried and kind of convinced as a state that we were going to lose a congressional seat because of the lack of population growth. But because we saw a growth in Latinos and in other newcomers into the state, we were able to keep a congressional seat, which is a really big deal. So like I said, I think it's a huge success for our state to be able to do that. But it's also an amazing thing to see that every little corner in our state now has a Latino.
Thank you so much for that. And it's really important to take that in consideration from all the stories that we've in the past, how the Latinx community has grown immensely within the state of Rhode Island, despite historical ties to being predominantly Caucasian. So going off of that, can you explain how has the Latino Policy Institute, how have they been engaging within the Latinx community within legislation, certain activities within the state of Rhode Island?
Absolutely. So for the last 3 years, while I've been at the Latino Policy Institute, it's been really important for me that a lot of the research and advocacy expertise that the Latino Policy Institute has kind of grown for over 15 years, that we use that through advocacy at the State House. So by a lot of collaboration with other organizations and experts, this year specifically has been one of our most successful advocacy years at the Rhode Island General Assembly. And the way that we've been connecting with community, again, it's been kind of a twofold. One, it's been through other community organizations that have a lot more direct service and direct connection, because we understand and have to elevate and respect the work that other organizations do, like Progreso Latino and other youth organizations that are much more in direct connection with organizations. So we work really close to them to make sure that, one, we are hearing what our community is saying and what their concerns and needs are, but 2, it's also keeping them informed of what's happening. And so one of the best examples that we have for that is this year, like we have for the last 9 years, we're advocating to provide licenses, driving privileges to undocumented Rhode Islanders. And, it hasn't passed for a while. It's been 9 years since we've been trying to do this. And this year, through our Immigrant Coalition, which we are part of along with other organizations, the Latino Policy Institute has been reaching out to community members to really teach them how to write testimony, for example. I've sat with them to translate during hearings. And so we've had community members, not only put themselves at risk and put their fears aside, and to come and share their stories or their family's stories. And so we're incredibly proud to have done that. We're also advocating for the expansion of healthcare to undocumented children. And we've had that connection not only with legislators, because when we found this this really big gap, we right away reached out to legislators and municipal leaders to kind of do something. And through collaboration, we've been able to do this. And then to also hear back from families, from doctors especially, about what harm this has been a really important way to connect with the community. And again, we understand and acknowledge that we are not direct service organization, and that's why our platform is really important, to elevate what they do and make sure that what the community needs is there first, while also connecting that with what is possible in policy.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. And so, going off of that answer, can you explain more on like what are the biggest obstacles that you see within the Latinx community, and even adding on to the undocumented community, as previous stories with Mayor Maria Rivera. She's done a lot of great work with the undocumented community in Rhode Island. So can you speak a little bit more on what obstacles do these two communities face, and how have you been addressing them with the Latino Policy Institute?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. I think the largest obstacle, sadly, is the continuous divestment in our communities. So not only recently, but for decades, the state and our country has not invested in communities that are populated by Black and Brown people, and especially if they're undocumented, we have less of an interest in investing in these communities. And so I think that that's the biggest hurdle, because truth is that we can have amazing leaders like Mayor Maria Rivera, but she's also coming into this place where there's also so many gaps already, right? There's gaps and barriers that she can kind of like help break through, but there is just decades of divestment. And so one of the things that we have highlighted for the last 15, 16 years that we've been around is how is our state and our country investing in multilingual learners, in how we're addressing poverty, which is an incredibly important thing for just the state in general. Economic equity. One of the things that we are focusing on a lot more this year is just health equity, which is really married to so many of the issues that we talk about every day. But it's that I think we have, as a state, we haven't been, as a country, we have not been brave enough and responsible enough to invest in communities that need us. And that has been the biggest hurdle for our communities. And as a result, it has impacted negatively the rest of the country, because when we're not helping the fastest and largest growing community in the state and in the country, you're really cutting off your own legs as a nation.
That's a very interesting point, and it's great that you pointed all those things out and use those interesting analogies. And going off that, can you explain more on what type of impact have you had with the Latinx leaders that you've been creating within the Latino Policy Institute, and what type of services, what type of roles have they taken on, just benefiting from the services of this organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're really proud to work not only with elected officials at the municipal and state level, but also I believe that some of the most important leaders are community members and community leaders themselves. And so I think that some of the impacts that we've done is, again, providing them with research and data, and also kind of like best practices of what is happening and why a lot of these legislative actions need to take place. Also listening. I think listening has been an important thing, because when we see ourselves as a bridge between community and the legislative or elected body, sometimes that bridge has caused a lot of issues when there's no communication. We are also really excited that we are able to work with people in different municipalities, not only from city council to mayors, like Mayor Jorge Lorza in the city of Providence, the city council in the city of Central Falls, and Mayor Rivera, which is amazing. Mayor Don Grabian in Pawtucket has been a big supporter of the Covering All Kids legislation that we've been talking about, and so has the General Assembly. It's an incredibly important body, and I think that they're understanding a lot more how these impacts really kind of have go back to their own communities. And so we are really proud of the connections that we've made, in all parts of the state. Again, not only through elected officials, but the most important people that are our community.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer, and it's really great on the amazing work that you all have been doing. So just, going off of that question, and to conclude our time, what else would you like our audience to know about the work that you're doing with the Latino Policy Institute? How would you like them to be engaged, and what would you like to leave our audience with, and about Latino Policy Institute, and how to be more engaged, and what else should they know?
Absolutely. Yeah, the Latino Policy Institute has been around for over 16 years, and we hope to be around for many more. please visit our website at lpirw.org, and our social media, which you can find there too, is the same, lpirw, in Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I think we are really excited and proud of the work that we've done through the legislative body this year, not only to improve voting access, health equity, and hopefully economic and equity through driver's licenses. We are really excited of what can continue to come through all this work, and we're looking forward to continuing to invest in our state.
Yeah, thank you for talking with us, Marcela, and for being our guest on RILN Opinion Plus. And join us next time for another episode. For more information about our discussion today, check out our web story on RILatinonews.com. Follow us on Twitter at RI Latino News. I'm Brian Zapata with RILN Opinion Plus, and we'll see you next time.